Hello, my friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is David, and I am here with a slew of things just like in the last video. Not the things I was expecting either. Not all of them, at least. It's been longer than I anticipated, but my wife was strongly encouraging me to make sure I made this video tonight, so I'm going to listen to the better advice and just get this done. Because I've got a book haul to share with you. It was an unexpected book haul, but one nonetheless. Sorry, I'm going to go under the assumption that this completely boots me out of that 500 book challenge. And that's okay. Sorry, Michael. Unlike most other people when they fail the challenge, I'm not going to go nuts and go and buy 50 books. But before we get to any of that, so I've gotten lower tech. I've since upgraded my laptop to a desktop here at home. So I no longer have my laptop as a backup recording device. It was getting old, it was getting really slow, it was crappy quality anyway. But that means that the spin to reveal winners, I can't really do that as effectively. So I went ahead right before recording this. I spun for the winner of Monster Huntress. I spun for my winner of A Merchant in Orient and Other Tales. And I spun the Booktuber recommendations wheel 5 times to give me 5 books that I will read that were recommended by all of you wonderful people before I turn 40 in June of next year. I have them all written down on here. So, the winner of the giveaway for A Merchant in Orient and Other Tales. So this is a short story collection. Both a mixture of fantasy and science fiction, along with a poem in there, for good measure. Is none other than Al from Big Hard Books and Classics. So congratulations, Al. Give me a shout out. Send me an email. With an address where I can get this out to you. I'll have it signed, and I'll get it on its way. Thank you for your interest in it. And then I spun again for Monster Huntress. And the big winner for that one was Bill Rutenberg from the Rutenberg Library, who lives just almost a stone's throw away from me. He's down in a different part of Iowa. But he is my booktube neighbor, so to speak, and I couldn't be happier to send something his way. So, Bill, likewise, send me an email. Let me know your address, and I will get this out in the mail, signed to you, sometime in the next week. Because I have one other thing that I need to be dropping in the mail anyway, to mail out. And so I'd love to get those on their way to you guys. So, let's get to the 5 booktuber recommendations, because that's probably what some of you are here for, were these 2 things. There weren't a whole lot of entries into the giveaway, which is fine, you know. I want to make sure it gets to people that are interested, really would like to read them. So the 5 spins, I did not write down or put into the wheel who recommended them, although I do know on a couple of these who did the recommendations, but not on all of them. I will be reading at least book 1, maybe all 4 of the books, in the Green Ember series by S.D. Smith. This was recommended to me in particular because I have a son who I read books with, and it was recommended that this could be a good book series that the 2 of us could read together. If memory serves, I think my wife had picked this up prior with the intention of eventually reading it with him, so I might just have to insert myself into that reading order. You know, she's busy reading him Charlotte's Web. I just got done reading The Hound of the Baskervilles, so been looking for what the next books would be to read with him, and this could just slot right in there really well, assuming we do have it on hand. The second spin is one I'm really excited about, and that is The Lakeside Cemetery by Jessica Haas. Very, very, very excited about that. You know, it's not necessarily my typical genre that I would go to, but in case you don't know, Jessica Haas is also known as Just the Book Freak here on BookTube. So getting a BookTube author book to win one of the spins That's 2 thumbs up right there. I started off on a really, really strong foot here with some great books. And then it just kept going. Because the next winner was Lioness by Jack Vance. So, fantasy by an author that I've been meaning to read. I really need to get to Jack Vance. I have Tales from Dying Earth sitting on my shelf. And I still haven't picked it up. I need to do that before I turn 42. I also need to read that. Then my fourth spin was a step into more classic territory. Devils by Fyodor Dostoevsky, which I am yet to encounter a Dostoevsky that I didn't like, although I've only read a handful. So we'll see if this continues that trend of Dostoevsky is absolutely firing on all cylinders for me, or if this one is the first one that kind of falls flat. I'm curious to see. It's been a while since I've done any Russian literature, and it'll be good to dip back into that. And then last, but certainly not least, I did do a quick glance at each of these after they won, and saw that this one's nearly 1,000 pages long, so it's a good thing I've got almost a year to read through all of these. And that is Musashi by Eiji Yoshikawa. So this is 900 and some odd pages, but it sounds phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal sounding. I am beyond excited for it. My issue that I have at the moment is that hopping on Amazon, the prices on there are pretty high on that one. So I'm going to be jumping over to Thrift Books, take a look. I might put out some feelers out at the Brattle to see if a copy happens to appear at some point in time. To be able to maybe source through Steve Donahue over there. We'll see. But there's my 5. If I get through them with enough time, I might do another spin and pull off another 1 or 2 recommendations. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to try to be super laid back and casual with that. So, before I get into the book haul, I'm going to mention the only book I've finished since that amount of time. And it's a book I hadn't even started at the time. But I figured I had better. Because June is also known as June on the Range because of Michael K. Vaughan. So I picked up one of 2 westerns that were sitting on my shelf. This is Riley's Luck by Louis L'Amour. So very, very well-known author. Book may not be as well-known. However, I can very happily report this was great. I read a western last year, and it was just not fantastic. So I didn't read either of the other 2 westerns I had on my shelf. I intentionally read the shortest of the 3, but I did keep the other 2 on my shelf. The odds of me picking up that other western before the end of the month and giving it a read went up pretty high with this. It also led to me looking for a very specific western when I was out doing my book hauls. I did not find Lonesome Dove in the wild. But I was willing to give it a shot. I found a later book in the Lonesome Dove series, but I did not find Lonesome Dove. So, that's okay. I don't need to get to the best western that has ever been written. Maybe at some point in time, it'll come my way, and I'll give it a read when it does. So, on Thursday, wife, kids, and I, we all packed up the car and went up north. So, took about, what should have been about 3.5 hour drive up north to Mayo Clinic up in Rochester. My daughter had an appointment Friday morning at like 7:45, so we needed to go up there. We needed to stay overnight. The original plan was we go up there, we stay, we come back down. We might meet with some people on the way back down on Friday. We got up into our room. My wife really enjoyed the layout of it because it worked. It had separation between the bedroom and the living room, so a door that could shut and all of that. So it would be slightly better than what she had envisioned. So I just looked at her and said, well, why don't we just see if we can stay in this room one more night and extend our stay and just treat it like it should be a vacation rather than just we're here for an appointment and then we're going back home. And so we did, which was a great call regardless. But my wife made the suggestion, well, since we're up here, see if there are any bookstores that are on that map. So 2 years ago, I think it was, we went over to Omaha and going into a bookstore there. I just very recently started my channel, only a couple months into it, and so I was interested in a bookstore. So I went into a bookstore and they had one of the Midwest Indie Bookstore roadmaps, and I was blown away by it. Big giant thing. And so later that year I went and did a kind of a big circuitous loop through Iowa to hit 6 different indie bookstores that were on that map. And it was a lot of fun. Like, it was a great trip. I took a day off and just went and did that for the whole day. It was exhausting by the end of that day. But I enjoyed going, and I made a point in each and every stop that I made. I bought at least one thing. I didn't go nuts in any of them, but I wanted to show some support to the local indie bookstores. And so when she suggested I should see if there were any around in the area where we'd be staying or in the area where we'd be meeting our friends, I took a look. And sure enough, there was one about a mile away from the hotel where we were staying. And there was one about 2/3 of the way to where we were going to be meeting with our friends. So it was like, okay, great. We have 2 bookstores that we can go stop in. So we did that. We did one of them that Friday. And then Friday night, my wife suggested, well, we'll hit the one that's here in town before we leave. And then there was one that we saw that was potentially an on the way home that also said that it had candy shop. The candy shop part of it was very disappointing. But she also found 2 others, in the northern part of Iowa that would kind of be on our way if we wanted to. So all in all, we ended up hitting 4 out of the potential 5 that we had looked at. So I've got my 2023 map here. And so, I've circled up here the ones that we went to. So in the order in which we went to these stores. So we went to the Little Professor Bookshop, which was in Owatonna, Minnesota. That was our very first stop. And I picked up a book. So I picked up 2001: A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke. It's one that I knew I didn't have on my shelf. I have, I think, one other later in the series that came in an eBay lot. But this is one that I not only want to read this, but also to watch the movie. I've seen the movie before, but it's been a long time. I think I would appreciate it more now than I did back then. But they also had a whole bunch of boxes towards the front that were marked 50% off. And in them were, about half of them were filled with single issue comics. And the other half of them were filled with comic graphic novels. So I told myself, well, I should find one that's half off. And so I was looking first and foremost for X-Men. Because I'm reading X-Men every single morning. Usually in the morning. Sometimes it's in the evening. I did take the 2 mornings off during the trip. I read Superman instead. But I have read a comic every day ever since. But I didn't see any X-Men that really jumped out at me as, parts of storylines I'd been looking for in particular. And so when I came across a set of 5 or 6 different Conan graphic novels, I stopped and said, you know what? I had 4 different volumes of Conan on my shelf that I've read through all of them and loved every bit of them. I should pick up a Conan. there is very low risk of getting something bad. And so some of them, it was like volume 5, and one was like a volume 10. And, that can work, but I did find something that said volume 1 on it. So I picked up Robert E. Howard's Savage Sword, volume 1. So this is by Dark Horse Comics. This just has all original stories that ran in issues 1 through 4 of Robert E. Howard's Savage Sword, including the Lovecraftian horror tale The Thing on the Roof, and a noir mystery featuring Detective Steve Harrison. And of course, there's lots of barbarian action starring the one and only Conan. So, it's only 4 issues. That's the only disappointing part about it, but it looks fantastic in here. And assuming that it goes really well, I will have a new set of Conan that I'll be wanting to look for. I'm sure Michael's read them. I'm sure Steve has read them. And they can let me know ahead of time. Feel free to Voxer me. Let me know just how good or how bad of an experience I'm in for. So that was at the Little Professor Bookstore. And so this morning we stopped at Garden Party Books in Rochester, which is the one that was a stone's throw away from where we were staying. And boy, I told my wife when I walked out of there, because she had the kids playing at the park that was right next to it, so that they could burn some energy before a long day home. And it was a long day home. We left to go to the bookstore about 10:30, maybe 10:45. We got home about 6:30. It was a long day. But I told her when I met her at the park right afterwards, said I probably could have easily spent $500 in there. They had it nice and neat, so their pricing system was solid. Children's books, $3. Paperbacks, $4. Hardcovers, $7. You can't ask for simpler than that. A little bit higher than what I would have wanted, but I'm okay with that because I know when I'm looking at something, okay, it's hardcover, I know what price is going to be. And so I was looking at different things and found some stuff. I told myself I'm probably going to buy a paperback and a hardcover. Although up at the very front they had, I don't even know which one of the series, but those hardcover series that you see where they all have the matching style and it covers a very broad range of literary figures through history and things like that. So one was Praise of Folly by Erasmus, which is fantastic. Really, really great. And then Selected Essays by Montaigne. And I think, if memory serves correctly, Montaigne was one of the ones on Steve Donahue's Western Canon Starter Kit. I have not read Montaigne. And those were only $3 a piece. If I hadn't have found a good hardcover, I would have gone and gotten both of those. I found pretty early on this unread copy of The Currents of Space by Isaac Asimov. This is book 2 in the Galactic Empire series. I read last year, The Stars Like Dust, and really loved it. One of my favorite reads of the year. I have Pebble in the Sky on my shelf. The only thing that was stopping me from continuing that trilogy was this book. So I was absolutely delighted to find that. Was happy to pay $3 for it. And then one of the last things I found, and as soon as I saw it, I said, David, if you don't pick this up, you are going to regret it, because this is a David book if you've ever seen one. I was kicking around, picking up book 3. They had a nice hardcover, looked unread, of book 3 in Bernard Cornwell's Saxon Tales series. I have book 4 in hardcover, but none of the others. So I was like, okay, it'll continue my hardcover collection of that. And then I saw book 3 in Ken Follett's series on the Kingsbridge series, which is the one I think I was missing. But I was second guessing myself as to whether or not I was missing it. Now I can actually look and see. So I have a Column of Fire on my shelf, which is, I think, book 3 So I'm glad I did not pick it up because they had 2 copies of that hardcover that were really well done. But I think it's World Without End. That's book 2 that I actually need. So glad I held off on it. But I picked up, this is Oxford History of English Literature. So this is Chaucer in the 15th century by H.S. Bennett. I mean, this is pristine looking. They had several other volumes in this series. The other one that I kicked around is, you can see here, they have part 1, Chaucer, part 2. It is English Literature in the the Close of the Middle Ages by Sir Edmund Chambers. Almost talked myself into buying the 2 of them. If we hadn't have been planning on stopping at more bookstores, I might have just done that. But they had a couple of other later ones in there. But I'm looking at the back here, and my goodness, I want. So English Literature Before the Norman Conquest is Volume 1, Part 1. And Middle English Literature is Part 2 of Volume 1. I want those. I should probably get the Close of the Middle Ages. So I've got 4 books for sure in this series that I would really like, but I don't know. Maybe I should get all 10 or 12 that are in this series at some point in time and just get a nice matching set. We'll have to see. I know who to put feelers out with if I'm very serious about trying to find those. And I'm going to be putting those feelers out for what I took home from the next spot. So we went to Sweet Reads, which was in Austin, Minnesota. This is the one that I was particularly excited about because it was advertised as bookstore candy store. So I'm like, okay, here's something for my son, who's 7, that he could be excited about other than just books. You know, he's very excited about the books too. He ended up getting probably more books than I did. And probably spending more on books than I did. But that's okay. I'm happy that he's excited about it. So I found very little in that one that I was really genuinely interested in. But I found Volume 1 and Volume 2 out of 3. I went and looked while I had it in my hand. I saw, okay, it's missing the 3rd volume. The reason why I've held off on The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, picking one of them up before, is because, so it had ribbon tied around, so it was tied around, covering up right there, complete and unabridged in 3 volumes, but now I can see it. So I knew I had Volume 1, Volume 2, but I figured at the price of $5 for the 2 of them together, even knowing that I need 1 more volume to complete the set, that was money well spent. And now I know which one I want to get, or I could hold off, read Volume 1, make sure I actually want to read the rest of them. I probably do. I mean, Edward Gibbon, this is very, very widely regarded as a very solid historical text that could be read. Doesn't need to be read, but could be read. And so I'm happy to have. I've really been trying to find a complete collection all at once. And so that is the step I needed to take. And so I was happy to get those. And it was almost just because I couldn't really find much else that was really calling out to me there. I almost picked up, there was a biography of Peter the Great that I think has been mentioned as being a really good one. But I couldn't remember for sure. And of course, you know, a big tall shelf full of Westerns, but no Lonesome Dove. And so the last stop that we made was at Prologue Books. It closed at 3 o'clock. We got there at 2:35. So we didn't have a whole bunch of time. And boy, this one. I said Sweet Reads. I had a hard time finding a book. I didn't have a hard time finding a book in Prologue, but I was disappointed overall in the selection. There was not a vast selection. It was very minimal in its selection. I get it. I mean, small town. It's in Charles City, Iowa. So I mean, small town. I'm not expecting the world out of it, but nothing used. So it's all brand new books, all priced at full price. Their big thing there was, you can have a glass of wine or buy bottles of wine. It's a wine and bookshop. The other one that we could have gone to was in, I think, Iowa Falls, and that was going to be a coffee and bookshop. I would have much rather gone to the books, but this one was more on the way. And so I ended up picking up one that I know Michael from Fit to Be Read strongly recommends, and that's The Wind-Up Girl by Paolo Bacigalupi. So this is a Hugo and Nebula award-winning novel. I know it's supposed to be good, so it's one that I said, you know what, I can pick this up. So that was my Midwestern road trip to the bookstores. I've still got a ton of books left. I mean, I don't know if you can see just how many books are on, or bookstores are here in the Midwest. I mean, it's massive. I turned it over, and I mean, it's got them all listed out. And I'd love to start marking even more of those off in the future. But in true Michael K. Vaughan fashion, I'm saving the best for last, because this is not part of the bookstore trip. And so Troy Trade Up, if you're still watching, Troy sent me The Forsaken Boy. I didn't ask for it signed, but I'm just going to take a glance inside. Signed. To me, personalized. And Protect Me from the Things I Think I Want, also by Troy Trade Up. So, again, signed by the wonderful Troy Trade Up, who we all miss here on BookTube. My goodness. What a great participant in the community that he was. And I'm glad that he's found peace and happiness for what he needed to do. And certainly with how little I've been able to make videos, I understand. It's tough sometimes to have that time in order to do those things. So this has gone on long enough. This is what happens when I'm exhausted after a long day of travel. Kids are in bed, the wife's in bed. I'm wanting to go to bed at some point in time soon. I'm probably going to sit down and read and finish the chapter I last started in Endymion by Dan Simmons. I'm almost at the halfway point in that. And I'm so glad to be diving into that one, because it's just so good. Unfortunately, Louis L'Amour kept me from it for another week. Shame on you, Louis L'Amour. But it was worth it. Riley's Luck. Definitely check it out if you see it. Anyway, that's enough. I will catch you later. Thank you.